When someone's looking at your portfolio, they really want to see your work. They don't want to see all your sketches.
I'm your host Prashant Gupta, and for very first episode, we are thrilled to have a designer like yourself, Anil Lupton. It is such an honor to have you here. Welcome to Heardesigners, a podcast for designers by designers. Let's hear more about you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ellen Lupton, and I'm a designer, an educator, and writer. I'm also a type mom. I have a presence on Instagram, and you might see some of my lessons about typography and baking cookies. I love typography. I love graphic design. And I want everybody else to love it too and to feel welcome into the world of design, which is waiting for you. So in my life, I have created books and museum exhibitions and videos and online classes for Skillshare and Domestika and workshops at Cooper Union in New York. Well, so when I was in college, I became very interested in the history of design and design theory and design criticism. And this is a long time ago, and there was very little to read about design back then.
From the perspective of a lot of young designers, do you think discipline shift in today's world is okay and employers should be okay with it?
You mean discipline shift from like print to digital, or
No, a lot
what
of
do you
people
mean?
so from an architect to graphic design, or maybe the most recent one and the most common one is going into UI UX.
So making something like visually compelling, visually clear, knowledgeable, it looks like it fits into our world, that's really hard. And so for an architect to jump into that is very difficult, even though they have a lot of knowledge about their own visual discipline that is mind-blowing and amazing. So it does require some training to make things that like work visually. So going into UX, UI is a little bit different because a lot of that work doesn't have such a strong visual basis. You might be working with brand standards that already exist and, a system that's in place and best practices that are established like in your firm. But I think it takes some time
Yes,
to
it does.
develop a good
I'm
portfolio, for example. You can help them.
So coming back to you, what inspired you to get into design?
As a young person, I was an artist. Many young people think they're going to be an artist, and I like to paint, and I, was artsy and funky girl, And when I got to college, that's when I was exposed to graphic design, which I hated because it was all like drawing a perfect line in ink and things that I was terrible at. I would always smudge the ink. But what I liked and what drew me in was the connection between graphic design and language. Because in painting, you don't have that, right? Painting is just the visual. And graphic design, I come from a family of English teachers. Graphic design is this interface between words and publishing, between writing something and putting it out into the world. And that's what hooked me on graphic design. So it's the communication part. Yeah.
Beautiful. And you always had a clear roadmap of your career ahead.
I never had a roadmap, but I had great opportunities. Simple path. Yeah.
I'm not sure if it was simple, but it was definitely path breaking. So, one of my favorites, design is storytelling. How can young designers tell compelling stories in their portfolios?
Oh, that's a great question. So what is a story? A story has change. A story shows some kind of transformation, and the transformation has to matter, right? So how do you tell a story through your work? Before, after? So I just redesigned some packaging for a a food company. And like, it's so exciting to me to see how it looked before, which was very bad, and how it looks now, which is like beautiful and sensory and sensual. So that's a really nice story if you're redesigning something. Process is a story, but you can't get too swampy with it. Like when someone's looking at your portfolio, they really want to see your work. They don't want to see all your sketches. However, if the process is interesting and you brought something really special to the process or some special knowledge like interviewing users, that can be a good story.
People who are fresh out of college, who never got this opportunity to work on a project like these, how do they put storytelling in their portfolio?
Well, your portfolio has to have work in it, right? Whatever your projects are, there's a story there. So a student project also has research or process. A lot of student projects, at least where I teach, we do redesigns. So that before or after thing can be a part of your portfolio if you're a student. And of course, if you're developing something like a website or a digital product, you have to be able to show it in use. So that's a story. We got advice recently at a professional development event at my school where the designer who looks at a lot of portfolios, he's a creative director. He says in a portfolio, he wants to see a lot of work on the homepage. He doesn't want to have to scroll through, to see the work. So that thinking about how your work represents you from, like imagine a Pinterest board that's just you. What does that look like?
Makes sense, I think.
And that helps
That makes a lot of sense.
it helps a hiring person, a creative director, get a quick gestalt.
I'm sure they don't
What
have
you
that much
can
of a
do.
time to go through the entire thing. They get a lot of portfolios, right?
They want to know, can you do graphic design? I had a student show me her portfolio recently and she had all this tech. The only thing someone cares about who's looking at your portfolio is, can you do graphic design? And she's like, well, how would they know that without reading all my thought process? I'm like, they know it by looking. Do you have hierarchy? Do you
I've
have
been there.
typographic clarity? Are there levels of detail? Does my eye know where to look? Does the color make sense? These are things that you and I make instant judgments about without reading a lot, right? You just look at it and you go like, yeah, that's graphic design. And you look at something else and you go, it's just
So I
not
think,
design.
how is typography not only about fonts?
That's great. I'm glad you asked that because so many people, when they hear the word typography, they think of just the list of fonts when you go to choose a font in your software, this big list of fonts, which is so overwhelming. Typography is scale, relationships, space. Line spacing, grids, all those things are typography. And you could do all those things with just one font. I'm not suggesting you do. I love fonts. And I don't believe we should, restrict people's font diet like some designers have argued over time. But you have to look beyond just the font to the details and the structure of content in space.
I mean, too much to handle, though it's simply put and very effectively put, but I'm not sure it's as easy as it sounds.
I didn't say it was easy. I said it's not just picking a font.
You make it sound look very
Yeah.
easy. Okay, now that we are talking about type, in your 2021 AIGA podcast, you spoke about the fun of typography. What advice would you give to young designers to keep the fun alive in their early career, given the corporate pressure of delivery and performance?
Well, if your job isn't fun, then you do fun things outside your job, but you should also find ways to make your job fun, so that could be learning, right? Like making sure that you're learning new things. And lots of employers will, pay for you to take workshops and advance your career. Many of the students who take my Cooper Union workshops are there their employer agreed to pay for them to come to the workshop. And then there's so many online things you can do, which are not as fun, but still fun. Like I'm always watching videos about how to do things. I just love it. Like there's so many things to learn. So learning is fun. And so if you feel like you're in a job that's not so fun, think of it as a step that you're on the job learning to be better and learning how things work, how teams work, how systems work, and be building your skills. Give yourself these challenges to keep it fun.
I'm sure I'm learning to make my job fun.
You're learning today, running a podcast with these cool cards. It's so nice.
On that note, if you were a typeface, which one would you be and why?
Well, one of my favorite typefaces is called Scala, designed by Martin Mayor in 1991. And I'd say it's the first typeface I fell in love with. And it's a very beautiful serif typeface that is humanist, but also very crisp and geometric. So from a distance, it looks like it could be Garamond, but you come up close and it has these beautiful sharp edges and little tiny slab serifs. It's so beautiful. And then Martin created a sans version a few years later and joined the super font revolution, super family. So like a typeface like that, there's so much you can do with it.
It's a beautiful font indeed. Have you ever been to India?
I have never been to India. I would love to come. I have a lot of students from India, and I'm a big admirer of your culture and food and textiles and design and everything, but I've never been there.
So when can we expect you? Have you tasted the Indian masala tea?
Yes, I have had Indian masala tea. You can get a lot of tea here in the US, and sometimes my students bring me tea, and they laugh when we say chai because that's just tea. But I'm drinking chai tea right now.
I would like you to say Namaste Hiredesigners.
To say what?
Namaste Hiredesigners.
Namaste, Hiredesigners.
What is the next big thing in design that young designers should watch for? And I'm not talking about iPhone 16.
That would be funny if Apple came up with a new way to identify new products.
I think they did in their latest iPad versions where they played with a lot of type with the backgrounds, right?
Well, I mean, the elephant in the room is AI, and I don't want to talk about it because I'm not an expert, and every day there's more articles about it. But all of us have to be paying attention. As an educator, we have to create policies for our students, but also get them to engage with it. A lot of my students, like for moral reasons, refuse to use AI. And I think that's a mistake because you don't want to not know what it is or how it works. And we should all be identifying ways to control it and ways to use it ethically. Because if you don't, you're not going to be performing in your discipline.
As you just said, design has always been a part of social revolution.
Mm-hmm.
How can designers actively contribute to today's societal changes?
Well, social revolution, looks different to different people. For me, I want to see a just, inclusive society that is tolerant of LGBTQ people and is positive towards the environment and seeks, broader economic equality. But that's not true all across the world, right? We see the rise of totalitarian governments and intolerant societies and surveillance states. So social change is not one thing. And all of these social movements use design to spread their messages and their tools and their infrastructure.
Okay, this one is totally non-related. If you could live in a fictional world, which one would it be?
Well, I love baking, and I've sort of discovered cooking, baking and canned cookies and cake and everything just the last year or so. So my fictional world would definitely involve food and being creative with food. That's how I relax. And I would like to do more of that. And so that kind of world would intrigue me.
So something like Alan in the Foodland.
Yeah, that's good.
What's your response to those who think standardizing design principle suppresses creativity?
Well, standardizing design principles does suppress creativity. It is about creating a wall. It's about creating rules and that you are going to perform within those rules. But many of the things that we love in life have rules, like football or chess or card games or the rules of narrative structure, how movies are made. Lots of things have parameters to them, and following those parameters helps them to function for people and makes it fun. If it's a game, the game's not fun if there aren't rules. So there is this limitation, but there's a lot of freedom within that. At the same time, if the game is boring, change the rules, design new ones, create, look at AI for ways to
Like,
mess
broke
it
all the
up,
rules, I believe.
Yeah.
We love your signature style. Oh no.
Oh
Yeah. Our audience wants to know what's the story behind it.
no. I started making these short videos about design principles about a year ago. And the very first one I did was, oh no, are you not having fun with typography? And I went on to develop some ways that people could get more comfortable with typography.
So at least this is what, our research have told us. So what would you say to those who believe a degree is always an essential for a design career?
Well, I strongly believe that design study is essential for design careers, because if you're just looking at, Instagram and thinking that that's going to teach you how to be a designer, or watching TikToks with shortcuts in Illustrator that move at 90 miles an hour, like you can only learn design from doing design.
So this one is a practical one. How do you deal with creative block?
Oh no. Creative blocks are terrible, and it happens to everyone. And I think it's really important to understand that creativity is an arc, that it goes up and down, and that we all experience periods of creative excitement and discovery where you feel like your mind is just wide open and everything is great and you're great and your work is great and you're just learning and growing. And then you're always going to have a peak, and there's always going to be a resting point. And that resting point can feel a little bit depressing and gloomy, empty. So that's when I do my laundry. You do something else, You just have to accept that you're not always going to be up, up, up. We have to rest and recover.
I'll definitely try that because yeah. What is the strangest inspiration you have ever had for a design?
Maybe Jello. Do you know what Jello is? It's like a
Yes.
transparent dessert.
Yes.
I did a project using Jello and got into researching Jello and how this had been a very popular dessert in the 50s in the US, and then people stopped eating it, but now it's back and it's very popular with young people who put vodka in the Jello and have Jello shots so they get drunk on Jello. Anyway, everything is a subject, like the most silly, stupid thing. If you learn about it, you find that it has so much meaning and
I'm,
potential. Yeah.
I'm just surprised. Could you share some traits or practices you have observed in designers who successfully earned international fame?
Yeah. So, like, one of our outstanding graduates at MICA and our MFA program is Shivani Parasnis, who came to our program and actually graduated during the pandemic, which is really tough. So she faced a lot of adversity, but she was so creative and curious as a student, and so always trying different media, but also delving deep into her own skills, like beautiful letter form design and type design. And she went on to become a designer at Spotify in New York City and is now a chief creative director at that company. And one of her areas of expertise is actually interpreting international music. So Spotify is all over the world and creates playlists and channels for cultures all over the world. And she was really able to develop that as a specialty for the company and for herself. So like her career is just stunning and draws on who she is as a person and the richness of her background as a person, and also her training as like a first-rate visual
Good
designer.
discuss.
She designed the cover of this book for me. Wonderful things in the book, including this beautiful poster featuring her typeface. So I'm a huge
Wow.
fan of Shivani Parasnas.
This one is, how does one get their work noticed by curators like yourself?
You have to have your work be visible. So you have to be on Instagram and you have to have a website. Websites, curators really like websites. They really like to be able to find a contact address. They want to be able to reach you. They want some kind of stable repository that has like reviews and information and your resume and that kind of stuff. So having an online presence is really important. So like if I read about you on Dezeen or It's Nice That, I want to be able to then go find you and like invite you to come do a speech at MICA or run a workshop or, participate in something. If I can't find the person and contact them, I'm very frustrated.
So, speaking on this note, do curators look out for commercial work, or do we have to create separate pieces?
I know when I look at portfolios for our MFA program, I want to see some of both. The work that people do independently, like 36 days of type, these challenges, that's really important to people do when they're responsible for the message and the form and everything. But then there's also the reality of design, that it's a response, right? It's a response to somebody's problem. And that's what we really do day to day.
So, I have a very small rapid fire for you. Very, very quick. Mac or Windows? Comic Sans or Papyrus?
Oh, Comic Sans, definitely.
Serif or Sans?
Serif.
Work from home or office?
Home.
Night owl or early bird?
Early bird.
Tea or coffee?
Tea.
Print or digital?
Print.
Dogs or cats?
Oh, dogs, totally.
Time travel to past or future?
Pass.
Books or movies?
I gotta do both.
How to price your design service?
Well, pricing is complex, and you have to be sensitive to what the client can afford. But you also want to, be firm about the value of what you're doing and can you afford to do it. So, a really big company can afford to pay you more than a small producer.
Okay, this one is from Mew_Syria. How does one know when to stop iterating and explore design?
Yeah, I have some students that they never get past the sketches. At a certain point, you have to say, here's the design. And that can be your own intuition, or you get somebody else to choose, your client, your teacher, your roommate. If you just have 300 variations, part of your job is to pick one.
Okay, this is from Charmy_30. Does perfectionism exist in design?
Yes, perfectionism. Perfectionism is sort of a disorder, when people they can't get past a project because they can never get it perfectly right, or they become very distressed by any kind of error, they become unduly distressed. So I think perfectionism is something that we need to move past and not be burdened with too much.
How to handle clients who don't know design?
Well, our job is really to educate clients. So when you're working for a client, you're not just giving them a logo, you're giving them the whole philosophy of it and showing them the value.
And there is an associated with question with this, and which is, how do we handle such bosses?
You have to educate them too.
I think it's tough, but some we might try. So this one is from Pratishtha.Rinva. It is believed that creative people procrastinate often. Do you also find yourself gripping with it?
Yeah, everybody procrastinates. So the thing is, how can you turn procrastination into part of your process, right? So research, shopping, going to the museum, all those things can feed the work when it's time to actually do it. And many of us just have an increased energy as we get closer to the deadline. So you just have to understand your energy flows and not worry about it so much.
Okay, I think we're done with this think block and I'll not hold you any further. And just in last, I would only like you to say if you have any message for our community, which is higher designers.
Oh no, I'm so happy that you're here and learning about design and engaged with design, and just keep it human.
Thank you so much.
My
Thank you so much, Alan. It
pleasure.
was
My
such a
pleasure.
fun yet insightful talking to you. I mean, me individually have learned so many things. I'm sure everybody would. This was one amazing session we had. Thank you for being our first guest.
Congratulations. I loved it. I'm honored to be your first guest.
Thank you once again for, patiently bearing with us, and thank you for
Sure.
answering all the questions with such dignity.
Thank you. Take care,
Nice talking to
everybody.
you. Have a
Bye,
great day
hired
ahead.
designers.
Bye.
Namaste.